Yeah.
Um, and then, so I think on that note, I'm going to invite Sarah from Burlington Planning and Zoning Department to share the ways that you all have been thinking about how to invite the community in and really invite them to rethink the story of housing that we all kind of internalize that might not be equitable or actually represent the housing landscape that we're in. Hi Sarah, how are you doing?
Hey, great. How are you? Thank you for having me today. I'm Sarah, and I am a planner in the Office of City Planning with Megan Tuttle and Charles Dillard, both of who are also here today. And we spent a lot of time over the last 9 months developing the concept of the Burlington Neighborhood Code. So our office works with on a wide range of policy efforts as a complement to other organizations and other city-led initiatives to support more housing. And often that involves changing zoning laws that govern where and how many homes can be built. And in order to expand the vocabulary of how we're talking about housing, we're being very intentional about how we talk about housing types that exist today in the city in order to help people more fully see the range of housing types that we have in Burlington, as well as opportunities for what new homes can look like. And through this work, we're using the same basic tools that all planners use when we talk about zoning, including different maps and data types, and combining it with artwork, stories, and different engaging events that really try and go beyond the ways that we normally talk about zoning policies. And I want to take a quick moment to review some housing goals from the 2021 Housing Action Plan, which recognize one, that we have strong neighborhoods, some of which have a very diverse mix of housing types. Two, we need more housing, and it can't all be in very large multi-unit developments downtown. And three, we want all neighborhoods to be able to evolve to the changing needs of households in Burlington. However, we also know that our zoning laws are really going to need to evolve in order to achieve that, with particularly in the city's residential neighborhoods that which have about 80% of that land zoned for low density development. But this conversation today isn't, as we know, about how we're going to change those zoning laws, but more about how we're talking about the types of homes and what types of home we're aiming to allow more of. And also, as John talked about, when we talk about building these new homes as planners, we use a lot of technical terms, that discuss very highly technical standards and how we regulate those homes getting built. But what we are actually talking about are the homes that people are living in. And the way that we talk about these homes, the actual terms we use to describe them, suggest different ideas about who lives in them and what the home's purpose is. And what's more, in most places, these types of homes that you see on the screen here are legally required to be separated from one another. And the neighborhood code is about how we recognize that our neighborhoods can and also do feature already a range of home and housing choices. Often this is referred to as missing middle housing, or specifically the types of neighborhood scale housing, like duplexes, triplexes, and even small apartment buildings that are common in some of the city's most beloved and historic neighborhoods. And these were eventually obviously made illegal to build by changes to zoning laws over time. And not only is this work about how to enable more homes that fit into this overall scale and pattern of many of these cities' neighborhoods, but also to be very intentional about talking about what this actually means. And here's an example of the Old North End in Burlington, four nearly identical buildings, all within a few blocks of each other. But if you were walking by these homes, how would you perceive them? Unless you were looking for very telltale signs of like these two mailboxes, two doors, one wouldn't necessarily assume that there might be multiple units within these. They might assume back here there's just like a second entrance to these homes. But when you walk through the neighborhood in this area, it's typically that you don't necessarily immediately think of density or the numbers associated with density and those regulation standards. And in fact, these buildings are likely used to be single family homes, and at one point were allowed to be converted into duplexes. And what's more is that these homes are very, very dense. And this information helps us as planners understand that sometimes what zoning says is typically allowed versus not allowed doesn't necessarily match. And despite the fact that all of these properties look essentially the same to someone walking by, the ones indicated in red wouldn't be allowed to be built in this neighborhood due to existing new zoning standards. And this information is really important in helping us understand what types of homes exist and why we can't necessarily replicate them, even if we wanted to, even if neighbors really wanted to. And so this is helping us identify what types of standards may or may not be helping us achieve our goals. And using events like so back to the different ways that we're doing this outreach, different events like housing trivia night and neighborhood walking tours, which you can kind of see some photos of here, are really fun and friendly formats to not only learn more about what exists within the neighborhoods of the city, but also to contextualize what types of homes we're talking about when we say more homes in all neighborhoods. And also these forums really help us demystify what certain zoning tools mean and what they actually do or do not do, and set the table kind of for a discussion later for why we need to really rely on different types of tools that provide more context sensitive approaches to regulating what types of homes get built and where. And with this art, which we get a lot of comments on, we chose to work with this artist, Jody Whalen, who is a resident in the New North End, but also works in the South End and is very aware of this neighborhood scale housing and the just community appreciation of these middle housing types. And this art is used to represent this project and also really help us communicate these ideas as part of the project, and just the deep appreciation that residents of Burlington have for these different homes and different styles. And I think,
Thanks so
I think
much.
I'm okay on time.
Yeah, everyone's so good on time this time around. I'm very impressed. And I know I've already told you this, Sarah, but the depiction of the houses in that illustration, I just find so rewarding. Something that we do at CVOEO's Fair Housing Project is we have our Heart and Home art project. And initially when we sent out these art kits, folks would respond to our "What does home mean to you?" prompt with this drawing of the box icon with the triangle on top. So otherwise known as, in our world, the single family home. And the irony was that a lot of the folks that we were working with did not live in single family homes. And so there's that, it goes back to that story of what kind of house that we live in. And especially there's one where it's like the square and you see all the windows, and we know lots of people live in a home that kind of looks like that on the outside. And then just this question of the perception of the culture of community is so important, because we know across the country, it tends to be these more so-called liberal leaning states that end up having zoning laws that are actually really exclusive and protect an idea of what a community is that isn't inclusive and maybe not even represent what the community historically has been. So and I have a question for John to that end for a Q&A, but before we get there, I